Welcome, all of you who just watched the Boston Celtics defeat the Indiana Pacers in overtime of Game 1 of the Eastern Conference Finals. I sound like I'm coming in from a different game that you might have been watching as I'm on a major network, right? We're going to talk NBA playoffs, obviously, to get the show started. We're going to jump into some more of these draft grades. We've already knocked down the NFC East. Now we're going to go straight to the AFC West, where the two-time Super Bowl defending champion Kansas City Chiefs reside, and talk about how they fared and the rest of their division fared in the 2024 NFL Draft, among other topics that we'll get to tonight. Lock in. You're with your man, Louie T, live on the Louie T Network podcast that starts now. The Louie T Network is powered by MusicHead University. MusicHeads, classes in session. Turn me up. Enroll on YouTube now. Link is in the description. Who else could it be but me, your man, Louie T? Welcome to the 420th installment of the Louie T Network podcast. I, of course, am your host, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. Entertaining game, to say the least. I got a lot of thoughts on Game 1 of the Eastern Conference Finals. Before we even get to the Eastern Conference Finals, though, we got to talk about how we got there, right? Talk about the semis and what took place, because I was floored, absolutely floored with what took place in the two Game 7s, with both road teams going into hostile environments and coming out victorious. I don't know, and obviously someone can do the fact check here. I can't remember. I've been a massive consumer of the NBA playoffs for probably 3 decades strong now. I can't remember a scenario in which we had 2 Game 7s on the same day, which we generally don't get, right? You don't often get 2 Game 7s in one day. I can't remember a time where 2 Game 7s took place and both games were won by the road team. I can't recall that taking place. I'm not saying it's never happened. I just can't remember that taking place. It's not like road teams don't win Game 7s, okay? It happens all the time. I can't think of 2 road teams on the same day winning Game 7s. That's a rarity, if you ask me. Let's start with the one in the Eastern Conference. That was the first Game 7 that we saw on Sunday afternoon. Pacers Knicks. I had a great conversation with rapper Big Pooh, and he said, look, if you've been watching the NBA all season long, then this series should be won by the Pacers, theoretically speaking. We spoke. There were 2 games left in the series. The Knicks had just won Game 5, gone up 3-2 in the series. Tyrese Halliburton had taken 9 shots total in that game, 4 in the first half. I was dismayed at his lack of involvement, and I felt like they couldn't win unless he was more aggressive. Of course, he was more aggressive in both Game 6 and 7. I knew that Indiana would win Game 6. No team in that series to that point had won on the opposition's home floor. So I just saw Indiana going home, speeding up the tempo. And to rapper Big Pooh's point, which is why I brought it up, he said the Pacers should be their series. With the Knicks' lack of depth and all the injuries that they've sustained to this point, you would think advantage Pacers. They're one of the higher paced teams in the league. They are one of the highest scoring teams in the NBA. In the regular season, they've been one of the higher scoring teams in the postseason. You would think that it'd be advantage Pacers, but yet the Knicks had been able to hold serve at home, and I thought they would do the exact same thing in Game 7. I was anticipating Pacers would go home, win Game 6. They did. I did not anticipate Josh Hart sustaining an injury in that game, to add to the laundry list of injuries that they already had. He did give it a go in game 7, but you could tell he was not himself. OG Anunoby tried to give it a run. He actually gave them 5 quick points. The problem was he couldn't move defensively. You could see he was a liability. Pascal Siakam was getting to the rim at will, cutting to the basket, and OG Anunoby couldn't do anything about it. So they had to get him out of there very quickly. And so it was just too much for the Knicks to overcome. And then ultimately the death blow, they were going to lose the game anyway. I felt like it. The Pacers, we've never seen a shooting display like the one the Pacers put on. Now, this I can say with 100% certainty. I don't need someone to fact check me or tell me, actually, Louie T, I know for a fact I've never seen a team shoot 76% from the field in the first half of an NBA playoff game on the road in a game 7. I know I've never seen that in my life. Okay. And it wasn't like they were just taking a bunch of twos. They were drilling threes as well. They were unconscious in the first half. They had 39 points in the first quarter. They could not miss. And you know what's crazy is the Knicks were shooting well too to start the game. It's just the Pacers were shooting at this torrid, ridiculous pace that we've never seen before. As I mentioned, 76.3% in the first half of an NBA game. Are you kidding me? I've never seen anything like that before. I think they finished in the 60s for the game. Are you kidding me? I mean, you can't shoot that good in practice with no one guarding you, right? Like, that's insane to do that in a game 7, no less. So then Jalen Brunson getting injured was it was the final death blow for a Knicks team that had fought their asses off this entire postseason. But they were overmatched, right? No Julius Randle to start the postseason. Mitchell Robinson gets hurt in the first series, and he was playing really well, in the playoffs. He had just gotten back not too long ago, and then he was gone. Bogdanovich gets injured, so your bench gets thinned out. Then OG Anunoby steps up, and he's playing tremendous basketball. And in the game of his life, he strains his hamstring. He's pretty much a no-go for the rest of the playoffs, even though he tried to give it a go in game 7. And then Josh Hart, who's been the heart and soul of the team, essentially, not named Jalen Brunson, the guy that has really been the catalyst, the engine, if you will, in terms of his play, getting the crowd involved, doing the dirty work, being scrappy. He injures his core, right? He wasn't the same in game 7. And then Brunson fractures his hand, and it's really a fitting end to what was a crazy and tumultuous and injury-riddled postseason for the Knicks. But I just didn't see them losing on their home floor. No team in the series had won on the opposition's home floor until that point. But the Pacers went apeshit in game 7, and credit to the Pacers, man. I didn't see that coming. It was a blitz. It was an avalanche. It was an onslaught. And obviously the Knicks just could not compete and keep up. And they ran out of gas and they ran out of bodies. And I tweeted that out. And the Pacers went into New York and beat up the New York Knicks pretty soundly in game 7 to move on to the Eastern Conference Finals, where the Celtics, the number 1 seeded Boston Celtics, awaited them. We'll get to game 1 of that series here in a bit. But Tyrese Halliburton, I just got to say, that's the kind of Tyrese Halliburton, even the one that we saw tonight, that's the kind of Tyrese Halliburton that we have to see if the Pacers are to advance 1, 2, even be in the series. He's got to be aggressive. He's got to hunt his shot. He's got to look to set the table for the rest of the team. As he goes, they go. Even if he's taking shots early or being a facilitator, but still he has to shoot the basketball. They're a much better team when he's aggressive. He shot 12 or 13 threes tonight. They need that. He's got the highest three-point field goal percentage of any player in the postseason. He's made the most threes this postseason. He has to shoot the basketball. And when he does, they're a different basketball team. And we saw that in game 6 and 7. And you really could just look at the entire playoffs for the Pacers and see and draw a direct correlation to his aggressiveness and their ability to score the basketball, having 6, 7 guys in double figures, which is what they've been all season long. But he's the catalyst. When he goes and he's aggressive, they're a tough team to deal with. We saw it again tonight. We'll come back to game 1 of the Eastern Conference Finals. And Pascal Siakam, I thought he was outstanding in Game 7 as well. I don't want to leave him out. We could talk about all the guys that stepped up, but he was huge. He showed that leadership of a guy that's won an NBA championship, and they're going to need that. They needed it tonight. He gave it to them in spurts, but still, you saw the young team mistakes by the Pacers down the stretch. We'll get back to Game 1, as I mentioned, here in a bit. Let's get to the Western semis with the Game 7. Nuggets, defending champions. No defending champion has advanced past the second round of the NBA playoffs. I think they said since 20. I can't remember what team it was. I think they said the Miami Heat. If you're talking Heat with LeBron and company, you got to go back a ways, right? You got to be talking 2016, 17, somewhere in there. Whatever the case may be. I don't remember what it's been a while. Just know that, right? So they had a chance to do it. Did the Nuggets, and everybody felt like, and I talked to rapper Big Pooh, and we both agreed that when we had that conversation, the Nuggets were in the midst of winning 3 in a row in that series and looking as if they had figured out the formula for beating the Timberwolves after getting drubbed in the first 2 games. Again, I hate being a prisoner of the moment. And I hate using definitives. Like I can't, I've never seen this before. I've never seen 76.3% field goal percentage in a half in a Game 7 on the road. Forget about Game 7 on the road. At home, Game 1, Game 2, I've never seen 76.3% in a half in a playoff game, let alone a Game 7 on the road. So I hate to be a prisoner of the moment, but I don't know if I've seen a series take on more ebbs and flows than the one we just watched in the Western semis between the Minnesota Timberwolves and the Denver Nuggets. It started out with the first 2 games with people thinking the Nuggets might get swept here. I mean, this shit has been a no contest the first 2 games in Denver, mind you, right? In Denver, they were beating the brakes off of the Nuggets, held them to their lowest point total of the season, 80 whole points at home. Joker couldn't create space. They were bodying him up. They were throwing different looks at him. Jamal Murray couldn't hit the backside of a barn. You weren't getting anything out of Michael Porter Jr., which was the theme of this series. He let them down again in Game 7. Aaron Gordon didn't look like the aggressive Aaron Gordon that we had seen in the first series against the Lakers. And they looked like they were overmatched by the best defensive team in the NBA this season in the Minnesota Timberwolves. You go back to Minnesota, or you head to Minnesota, Timberwolves up 2-0, and you're thinking they just need to put the nail in the coffin here. You win Game 3, go up 3-0. This series is done. And they go home. They lose Game 3. They get destroyed in Game 4. Denver goes home, takes care of business in a pivotal Game 5. They've won 3 in a row. And really, the last 2 haven't even been close, to be honest with you. Seems like the defending champions have figured them out. They've got their foot on the gas pedal. Their foot firmly on the necks of a young Minnesota Timberwolves team, and they're going to go for the kill, right? And then Game 6 happens. They beat the Nuggets by 45 points. What are we talking about here? So we go from 2 games of sheer dominance by Minnesota. You've got the likes of Charles Barkley and other people saying they're going to sweep them. They can't touch these boys. Then we go 3 straight for the defending champions, including 2 in a row on the road in Minnesota. The first 4 games, no team won a home game. And 3 out of 4 of them were ass whoopings by the opposition. I mean, what are we watching right now? And then Denver goes home, does what you're supposed to do in a pivotal Game 5, which is take care of business at the crib. And they've won 3 in a row, and they've done it decisively. And you're thinking this series is done. That's what I said. That's what rapper Big Pooh said. We're thinking it's going to be Nuggets and Celtics in the finals. We think we got it all figured out. Or so we thought. Timberwolves go home, win by 45. They're down 22 points in the third quarter, and they rally back and win the game by like 10. Whatever the final count ended up being, it's ridiculous what happened in that game. And so let's just talk about, let's just say this first. All right. So I think you have to start with the Nuggets didn't make shots. We talk about the NBA being a make or miss league all the time. And a lot of times what it just boils down to, we can sit here and compliment a team for playing excellent defense. Sometimes it is tremendous defense. Sometimes you just lock a dude's ass up. But other times it's just a make or miss league. The Celtics didn't make shots tonight. We could sit here and talk about, oh man, the Pacers did a great. No, the Pacers didn't do a great job. The Pacers aren't a great defensive team. The Celtics just missed shots. They were open looks and they didn't knock them down. The same thing could be said for the Denver Nuggets, especially in the second half. Jamal Murray had it on automatic. It was stuck on automatic in the first half. After a slow start, missed his probably first 3 or 4 shots. He got one to go down and then he couldn't miss. And he was the catalyst in that first half. And, you know, you could see that they were, you know, Murray's not going to let them lose this game. That's what it felt like. And Joker's going to come along, of course, because that's what he does. And they're going to drag a couple of others with them, KCP, maybe Aaron Gordon. Maybe you'll finally get the corpse of Michael Porter Jr. to rise from the dead and help you. But you just assumed that if Murray's got it going like he did in the first half, this might be a 40-point night, and he's going to make sure that they advance to the Western Conference Finals. And in the second half, he couldn't make a shot. And he had some looks. He had looks. Joker could not make a shot from deep. And they almost got to the point because Joker can shoot, but a lot of, you know, I think we've gotten to the point with Joker where if he's open, you expect him to make it. But if you look at his three-point percentage, Joker shot 33% from deep this year. He's not a knockdown three-point shooter, but he's gained the respect of most that when he's open, you expect him to knock it down, especially from the top of the key. That's his favorite spot. You know, that trail top of the key three, he'll knock that down with his eyes closed. But he was getting looks from all over the floor, from the wing, from the top of the key, and he just wasn't. He was 0 of 7 from deep before he made his first three-point shot. Right? He shot terribly. And they were all good looks where he was wide ass open. Michael Porter Jr. was awful again in this game. 7 points for a $176 million man. 7 points for Michael Porter Jr. I don't know the last game in the series he scored in double figures. Maybe it was like game 4 or something when they destroyed Minnesota. He might have scored double figures in that game. But it's been 9, 7, 2, 4. He was awful in this series. And then Aaron Gordon was, I thought he was too passive sitting in that dunker spot. When Aaron Gordon is shooting threes, when Aaron Gordon is an offensive threat, the Nuggets are a better team. You go look at those 2 wins in Minnesota when they dominated the Timberwolves. Go look at Aaron Gordon's stat line and look at how aggressive he was. When they're at their best, they need that third guy. And right now, with the way Michael Porter Jr. had been playing, you can't count on him to be the third guy. Aaron Gordon needed to be the third guy. And he was too busy chilling at the dunker spot, waiting for somebody to penetrate and dump it off to him so he could get an easy 2. He needed to be more aggressive, and he wasn't. And I don't know how many shots he took in the game. It didn't feel like enough. My guess is he didn't take more than 7 or 8 shots. KCP needed to be more aggressive. I felt like he only took 6 or 7 shots, right? They literally said, Joker and Murray, you take us to the promised land. Nobody else really chipped in and helped. Brown was scared to shoot. And Michael Malone doesn't go to his bench enough. But again, you know, in the playoffs, you cut that rotation short and you shorten the bench a bit. But he doesn't, much like Tibbs, he's only playing like 7 dudes. Like, honestly speaking, you get Brown off the bench, and you get a little bit of Reggie Jackson off the bench. That's it. Can you tell me who the backup big for the Denver Nuggets is? Can you tell me? I bet you can't tell me. Yeah, you just looked it up. You cheated. It's DeAndre Jordan. You know why you didn't know that? You know why you didn't even know he was probably on the team? Because he doesn't play. And I thought Michael Malone lost them this game. Now, guys got to make shots, and they didn't. And you could tell they got tightened. We're going to talk about that here in a second. But there was a stretch. Okay, so you could see the tide turning. And I'm going to talk about Minnesota here in a second because they deserve a ton of credit. We're going to talk about OKC and their Game 6 loss as well before we move on. There was a stretch. And this is where I thought the game was lost. I felt like they were going to lose at this point. The stem had already, the tide of the game had already turned in the favor of the Timberwolves. And they cut the lead to 4. And with every shot, you could tell that the Nuggets were tight. I could tell. I'm watching. I didn't play basketball at a high level. Okay. Played at the high school level. I didn't play at a high level. Okay. And I played JV. I didn't play varsity, right? I was a baseball player. Let me reiterate that. Okay. I played JV. But I played basketball my entire life until I got to high school for the most part. I know what it's like to get in those crucial moments. I know what it's like to have a big lead, see that shit dwindle to 2 or 3 points, and you need somebody to stop the run. And everybody wants to be the guy, but it's tough because you get tight, because you feel that pressure. Every shot feels like this needs to be the shot to turn the tide back in our favor. If anybody's ever played organized sports, especially basketball, you know that feeling. And you could see their sphincters. Those sphincters were tight, boy. They were short arming shots. They were good looks. And the crowd made it worse because with every miss, it was a gasp, like, like they felt the tension as well, right? And with every miss, the Timberwolves got more and more confident. However, there was a stretch when the Nuggets were up 4, and they had not trailed in the game to this point. And credit to the Timberwolves staff, Finch and company. Finch isn't even able to stand up right now. He's got his assistant coach standing up doing most of the coaching, and Finch is just telling him, what he wants, right? Credit to Finch. They didn't blink, right? Yeah, we're down big, and yeah, we're cutting down the lead. You know what they did? They sat Anthony Edwards down for a 2-minute stretch there. He sat down with about 3 minutes left in the third quarter, and there was a dead ball with about 48 seconds, I think it might have been. And they got him back in the game. And it was that 2 to 3 minute breather that he got there that energized him for the remainder of the game. You know who didn't get such breather? Jamal Murray and Joker. And I was screaming at the TV at Michael Malone. There was 38 seconds. There was another dead ball with 38 seconds left in the third. I said, sit Joker. And because this is the thing, right? I get it. You're only up 4. They've cut a 22-point deficit down to 4. You're clinging to your lead. I get all of that. You know what's more important right now? With 38 seconds left in the third quarter is sitting down your 2 best players and getting them a breather. And it's going to be an extended breather, right? The remainder of this quarter, let's say that this quarter lasts another 2 minutes, these 38 seconds. Then you get the end of the quarter and you can bring both of them back. And now they got a little bit of wind and they got a chance to finish this game, not dog shit tired with their tongues dragging. He didn't sit them down. You know what happened on the ensuing play? Jamal Murray, dog tired, allows a fresh off the bench Anthony Edwards to take the ball from him and go slam it in the damn bucket and cut the deficit to 2. And the game was never the same, if you ask me. Jamal Murray was dog tired and he should have been sitting his ass down, and Joker should have been sitting right next to him for those last 38 seconds. What's going to happen in 38 seconds? With you having the ball with a full 24-second shot clock, what's the worst that can happen? You miss a shot, they go down, hit a three, and you're up one. That's the worst that could happen. 38 seconds. Get your guys. It's more important to get your guys a blow here at the end of this quarter into the next quarter, because you know you're going to need them for this final 12. You got to have it. He didn't sit them down. Those dudes were dog tired at the end of the game. And I'm going to give you another example of them being dog tired. And the Timberwolves, and even though this one was out of necessity, the Timberwolves out strategizing Michael Malone, who is an asshole, by the way, right? He gets away with a lot of shit. You know, some of these head coaches who have this kind of off-putting, you know, I'm better than you type of mentality, kiss my ass. You know, Greg Popovich, for as great as he is, he definitely looks down his nose and tries to intimidate people with his bullshit. And if you're not tough enough to stand up to him, he'll intimidate you. You know, Michael Malone is another one of these dudes. You know, he snapped off at a reporter after the game because they asked him a simple question. Bro, you lost a 20-point lead. How are you feeling right now? And, oh, yeah, I get it. How the hell do you think I'm feeling? I get it. But he's got a job to do. Yeah, I know the emotions are fresh and they're raw in the moment, but this ain't your first rodeo, bro. You know how this shit goes. You know you're going to get some dumbass questions. And that one wasn't, I've seen a lot worse questions after a tough loss. Way worse. Okay. Anyway, you lost the game with your stupid ass coaching. Don't be mad at him for asking a question. You blew the 22-point lead. Let's talk about the Timberwolves because they won the game. What a comeback. What a comeback by a young team. This is a coming of age moment for the Minnesota Timberwolves. I don't know what they're going to do with this. I don't know if they poly that, you know, momentum of coming back from 22 down on the road to win convincingly, I may add, into a trip to the NBA Finals or what. But this was an impressive victory. And, you know, we give Cat a lot of shit. I do, at least. I can't speak for anybody else. I give Cat a lot of shit. Because while he self-proclaims himself the best shooting big man in NBA history, and he may be right, there are a lot of other shit that he doesn't do right. I think he's a low IQ basketball player. And that was, he proves that every single game when he picks up stupid ass fouls, and he did that and he had to sit down with 5 fouls because he was doing dumb shit. Right. But he was the reason they didn't get blown out in this game and actually had a chance. He kept them connected. Every time the Nuggets pushed the lead to 12 or to 14 or to 18 and it started to feel like it was slipping away, Cat would go on a personal 5-0 run, or he would make a shot and he would calm them down and he would restore order, right? He was huge in the first half. When Anthony Edwards was getting blitzed with different coverages and double teams and was passive, Cat was the one that kept them connected. It would have been a 26-point deficit at halftime instead of 15 if not for Cat. And then into the third quarter when the shit was slipping away, it was Cat who took advantage of undersized defenders trying to guard him in the post, shooting over dudes, being patient, taking his time, getting to his spot and making shots. He was the guy that kept them connected and then ultimately started that run that they went on when they got hot, started knocking down shots. The defensive intensity rose. I thought he played the shit out of Joker in this game, bodied his ass up, made it tough on him. Yeah, he ended up with 5 fouls, and 2 of those fouls were dumb, low IQ basketball fouls, as I talk about with Cat. And it forced him to sit down. But you want me to tell you what that ultimately did? Him having to sit down brought Naz Reid in the game. Naz Reid is a tough cover. When you're tired, the last guy you want to see is a dude that moves like a guard. Naz Reid is a big that moves like a guard. So the last thing Joker wants to see, the last thing that all of these dog-tired, you know, Denver Nugget defenders who haven't seen the bench since the end of the quarter, right, wants to see is a lively, vivacious Naz Reid who came in the game and took over the fourth quarter. Drives to the lane, crashing the boards. They destroyed the Nuggets on the boards. You know why? Because they were the more energetic team. You know why they had more energy and stamina? Because they actually used their bench. That's why. They subbed guys in, and they were able to keep guys somewhat fresh. Look, you're going to play a lot of minutes as stars in the NBA playoffs. Your starters are going to log a ton of minutes, but it's about finding ways to sneak them a 2-3 minute, breather and get them back in the game. The Nuggets just said to hell with that shit. And they were up. There was no excuse for Joker and Murray to not be able to see the bench at some point in the third quarter with that big lead. No excuses. But it was Cat early, and then it was Anthony Edwards late. And the others, you can't forget about Mike Conley, who hit some timely shots, man. When he was open, he knocked it down. Jaden McDaniels was outstanding with his defensive pressure, continuing to just be a nuisance, kind of fill up the stat sheet. He hit some big shots in this game as well from deep. So you can't forget the contribution. And Naz Reid was out freaking standing in the fourth quarter, along with Anthony Edwards, who he really turned it up another notch in that fourth quarter defensively. He started with that steal at the end of the third, and his defensive intensity ratcheted up. And, he said at the press conference, I put the clamps down on Jamal Murray. I beg to differ, but he did make it tough on Murray, man. There were some possessions where Murray, I think Anthony Edwards was playing the shit out of those screens, right? He was going over the top of those screens, fighting through, D'ing up Murray's ass. He forced him into 3 or 4 turnovers, tough shots, but Murray also missed some open looks that he had hit in the first half, right? But he made it tough. They took the ball from Murray, right? Mike Conley just swooped in on one play, just took it from him. They took the ball from Joker. We talk about turnovers and valuing the basketball and every possession mattering. You saw it in that game, right? When shit was going downhill and they couldn't stop it, they turned the ball over. They got tight, and the Timberwolves played like they had nothing to lose. And ultimately, it was their ability to be fresh. And here's the last thing that I'm going to say. The last instance of guys coming in with legs, with energy. So there's a late possession in this game. Minnesota, I want to say, might be up 3 at this point, right? And the Nuggets have a shot still in this game. Cat had to go to the bench with 5 fouls. So he got a breather, right? I think he went to the bench with like maybe 5 minutes left. There's now maybe 2 minutes left in the game at this point. And Cat re-enters. Fresh, right? He's just got this nice little breather. Mind you, the Nuggets are dog tired. None of their guys have seen the bench. Maybe outside of KCP, nobody's seen the bench. All these dudes are logging heavy minutes. And there's an offensive rebound late in the ball game. Cat swoops in. Nobody boxes them out. Nobody puts a body on them. These dudes are ball watching. They're tired, right? Got heavy legs. Cat's coming off the bench with energy. He swoops in and he dunks the basketball to put them up 5. And at that point, you're like, these guys are dead. Dead, I tell you, right? Michael Malone, he was the culprit here. No, your guys didn't make shots, but you didn't give them any opportunities to make shots because they were dog tired. And I know they're NBA players and they've dealt with this before and they've played heavy minutes before and you've leaned on these guys in the past. And I get all of that shit. You're the coach. You got to strategize a way. And to me, the easiest way, it's rare that you get a great opportunity at the end of a quarter to get your guys out and steal a couple of extra minutes because of the end of the quarter. He had a chance to do it with 38 seconds left, and he failed to do so. Poor coaching on his part, if you ask me. But I just thought the Nuggets I just thought the Timberwolves wanted it more. And it was one of the most epic collapses we've seen in a Game 7 at home with a defending NBA champion that we've ever seen before. That was gutless on the part of the Denver Nuggets, right? Other than Joker and Murray, nobody else showed up. Nobody else showed up. And at least normally you can count on Aaron Gordon to crash the glass and do the small things, the dirty work. Nothing. He was a non-factor on the glass. They were getting beat up on the rim, on the glass. So many second chance opportunities late in this ball game. they got no help from the others. And they weren't making shots in the second half. Joker wasn't making shots. Murray wasn't making shots. And nobody else stepped up and made a shot. KCP had a good look from the corner. Couldn't knock it down. So that was a hell of a comeback, man. And then real quick with OKC, they showed their youth and inexperience in Game 6. They should have won that game. And let me say this, though. As much as I can't stand OKC because they remind me of my favorite team, and I look at them as competition along with Minnesota. I look at those dudes and I'm saying, hey, we fighting for the baton, right? The Warriors are dead. Somebody's got to pick up that baton. And the Nuggets had it, for a year, and they were looking like they were going to run it back again, but they're not about that life because they're not deep enough in their bench. You can't. It's hard to just play 7 dudes and think you're going all the way to the chip. I mean, 2 of your dudes are elite, but when you just play, and then one of the dudes off the bench and Brown, who doesn't want to shoot the basket, it's tough to do that with seven dudes. Really 6, because Reggie Jackson barely plays. It's tough to win with a 6-man rotation, essentially. That's tough. I mean, they threw Holiday out there a little bit, but him and Reggie Jackson barely play. They might play 6-7 minutes max. He's relying on Brown in the starting 5, essentially, right? Doesn't play any backup bigs. When Joker, if he does find a way to sneak out of the game, they just go small, right? Gordon's probably going to end up playing the 5. Like, they just go super small. OKC. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, man. SGA. He's cold-blooded, man. Damn, he's cold-blooded. There's a sequence where the Mavericks, who were down most of this game, were down big, was down 16 and a half, fought their way back, took the lead, and then PJ Washington hits a 3 to put them up 5 with about a minute left in the game, probably roughly a minute 6 or something like that. And you're thinking that's the dagger right there. Crowd is going nuts. Well, Washington just hit the 3. You're reeling as a young team. You feel the whole, stadium, the whole arena just kind of closing in on you as you see your season slipping away from you. And SGA just calmly walks down the court and just walks into a 3. No hesitation, no pulse. Drills it. 5 or 6 seconds might have come off the shot clock. Are you kidding me? That's cold-blooded, man. Cut it to 3. I mean, cut it from 5 to 2. They get a stop. They get another 3. They take the lead. They're up 106-105. If they were to win that game, I would have gone back to that sequence and I would have said, what the? That's some cold-blooded shit, bro. He's legit. I wanted him to not be. He's legit, bro. I was like, yeah, bring that shit to the postseason. That slow-mo, methodical, I'm trying to get to the line 20 times a game. No, he can bully his way to wherever he wants to get to on the court. He's smooth. He can get to the basket. The step back is legit. The mid-range is wet. And if he takes it outside and he needs to, he can. That 3, balls of steel. Pause. But then in the same breath, you can't foul PJ Washington in that situation. And that's the youth and inexperience of all he had to do was go over there and just stand in his way. He was already double clutching and doing all kinds of weird shit. Just stand there. He was going to miss that shot and you were going to win the game and you were going to go back home and have a chance to win in Game 7. Don't foul him there. Lesson learned. It's a hard lesson to learn because you were one game away from potentially getting this thing back to Game 7 and advancing to the Western Conference Finals and your first foray into the playoffs. Now you got all summer to think about that stupid foul. That was a dumb foul. But when it's all said and done, it's a hell of a season by the Oklahoma City Thunder, and great comeback by the Mavericks. We'll see what that Western Conference Finals. It's going to be interesting because a lot of people think the Mavericks are going to win. I don't know who the hell is going to win that series. I really don't. I really think that the combination of Luka and Kyrie and Kyrie's experience, having been to an NBA Finals, been to multiple NBA Finals, having won one, Luka's ability to dominate a game even when he's not on, and then they're going to need PJ Washington to be the PJ Washington that we saw for stretches through that series where 29 points. He didn't have to do that every game, but he's going to have to crash the boards. I'm going to need him to average, close to double figure boards in this series. And I need him to be aggressive. They're going to need that third score, right? And I think the key for the Mavericks might be a guy like Tim Hardaway off that bench. Somebody's going to have to come in and score off that bench. I thought Jaden Hardy, he gave them some great minutes in that Game 6. Man, he was getting into the lane. He threw about 3 or 4 alleys to Jones. And what about Jones? He was outstanding in that game. And man, my buddy always says it's all about when you get a guy, right? At what point, what contract, at what point of their career do you get a guy? Because Jones used to play for the Suns. I think he might even broke into the NBA with the Suns, and he's nowhere near where he is now, where he was then, right? He's so much more advanced. He's so much more comfortable in his skin and his role in the NBA, and he's a problem now. He's a problem now. So anyway, that's going to be a fun series. Can't wait to see what happens there. Anyway, I digress. Let's get to the gem dropping session, shall we? Yeah, I think we shall. Let me drop this gem on your melon. Open your mind, let your conscience be free. You're now rolling with your man, Louie T-double-E. Let me open you up. Get you thinking a little bit. So, I want to jump into the AFC West and their draft grades and rank where these teams are from a draft perspective in this year's class. So, I really felt like the NFL allowed the Chiefs to recharge this offseason. Like, I thought they were at their lowest point last year and they were vulnerable. And somehow, for the first time in their run with Patrick Mahomes, they didn't have the number 1 seed. For the first time in the Patrick Mahomes era, they didn't have home field advantage and they had to go on the road. This was the first time in like 7 years. He's been to the playoffs every single year of his career, has Mahomes. Since 2018 when he was the starter, right? Even 2017 when he was a rookie, he went to the playoffs. He just didn't play. It was Alex Smith's show. But 2018 was his first year starting. Remember, they lost to Brady in the AFC Championship in Arrowhead. That was what prompted the NFL to change the rules about each team getting a possession because Brady went down the field and Mahomes didn't get to touch it, right? So or it might have been a different rule that changed. I think that rule didn't change until the Bills didn't get to touch it against the Chiefs. Something happened after that playoff game in 2018. I can't recall. Something happened, I felt like, with overtime rules. Anyway, this was the first year that they didn't get a home playoff game. or they had to go on the road, with Mahomes. Since 2018, he hadn't been on the road, and he wasn't on the road in 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. 23 was the first year he had to go on the road. He had to do it in the divisional round at Buffalo. He had to do it in the championship game at Baltimore. And somehow they allowed the Chiefs to escape. And then the 49ers had him on the ropes, dead to rights in the Super Bowl, and let him off the hook. And they've got a chance to do something no NFL team has done in the Super Bowl era, and that's win 3 in a row. And I think they're stronger than ever after the offseason and the draft. So we'll get to that in a second. But this is a division that has seen a ton of change this offseason. From the Raiders making it official with Antonio Pierce. They then hired the Chargers ex-GM Tom Telesco. Denver moves on from Russell Wilson, right? And to me, George Patton hasn't done a single thing right since he's taken over as the GM of the Broncos. He's been awful. He better get this shit right. This draft better be a good one, or else he needs to be fired. To me, Bo Nix better be the answer, and they better figure some shit out, and this draft better be a good one, or he needs to be fired. So I'm telling you, he's got 2 to 3 years left. Like, he shouldn't get another opportunity to hire another coach or, have another quarterback drafted under his watch. If this doesn't work, he needs to be fired. Obviously, the Chargers have wholesale changes, top to bottom, essentially, other than ownership. New GM, Joe Hortiz, new GM, new head coach, obviously, in Jim Harbaugh. Totally new staff, new identity. Everything's new in Los Angeles for the Chargers. And then there are the Chiefs, the model of consistency in that division, the rock of not just the AFC West, but the entire NFL. Let's get to the AFC West draft and the team that I thought had the worst draft in this division. And when I say worst, I use that loosely. It's not like they had a horrible draft. It's just of the teams in their division, their draft does not stack up to me. And it's the Las Vegas Raiders. So we'll go through this quickly. Raiders, to me, had the worst draft in the AFC West, and here's why. Love the Brock Bowers play. I thought this took some gumption. This took some balls. You took a tight end last year in Michael Mayer in the second round. You didn't have to do this. I didn't see you doing this. I get it. No quarterbacks were remaining worth taking. And I don't think you anticipated that being the case at 13. But it happened. 6 quarterbacks went in the first 12 picks, and it was insane. So you had to go to plan B. I did not think plan B would be literally best player available. Brock Bowers is a no doubt top 10 pick in most NFL drafts. That, of course, this was not a normal NFL draft. When you got 6 quarterbacks going in the first 12 picks, we've never seen anything quite like it, ever. Guys like Brock Bowers get pushed down the board, and you get to be the beneficiary if you're ballsy enough to do something like spend a first-round pick on a tight end after spending a second-round pick on a tight end the year prior. I loved it, right? Because it doesn't matter where you create the mismatch. Just create a mismatch. Whether it's at receiver, running back, just create the mismatch. Now you can have these nasty 2 tight end sets where it'll be tough to defend. You can flex him out and use him as a receiver, create a mismatch and a disadvantage. Brock Bowers is essentially an oversized receiver. Use him as such. So I love that pick. I love the second-round pick of Jackson Powers Johnson, JPJ, getting him at 44 when there was talk of this guy potentially being a fringe first-round pick, to get him midway through the second. That's awesome value. instant day one starter, plug and play. It's a great pick. This is where things started to go off the rails for me a bit, though. Thought in the third round, 77th overall, this was a reach for DJ Glaze. You drafted him as if he's a tackle. Now, you could use help on the entire right side of your offensive line. So if he projects as a guard, fine. If he starts for you at right guard and he ends up being really good for you, because his biggest issue is space, right? Which is why a lot of people think he's going to ultimately kick inside, is he doesn't deal with space all that well. He oversets and a lot of times opens that gate inside and is not able to rebound, and he gives up a lot of pressures in that regard. You move him inside, there's not as much space for him to have to cover. He doesn't have to overset, and you take away some of that disadvantage. You drafted him like he was a tackle, though. Like, if he's a guard, then you didn't need to spend a third-round pick on him. I'm just being honest with you. If he's a tackle, then this is good value. Except I don't think he's a tackle. You know? So, we'll see what he ultimately ends up being for you. But you lost a pivotal member of that offensive line, a guy that has been extremely valuable. Your right tackle last year, Jermaine Illuminor, who was a jack of all trades, could play tackle, could play guard, but he played a lot of right tackle for you last year, and you lost him in free agency. And you're hoping a guy like DJ Glaze can come in and help you. I'm not sure if he's ready to do that. I thought this was a bit of a reach. Same with the Camarian Richardson, right? The Camarian Richardson is raw as it gets at the cornerback position. And he reminds me so much of, like, I always talk about this. When you comp a player during the draft process, it's easy to just look at the history and the track record of that school and the type of player, because schools like certain types of players. You can kind of profile them at certain positions, right? For instance, Mississippi State likes high cut, skinny, narrow, fast corners. Just think about all of the guys that have come out of there over the last 5 to 7 years. Started with Cam Dantzler, then you had Emmanuel Forbes. Now you got the Camarian Richardson, and they all look the same. You know, all skinny, tall, angular, fast as hell. He ran a 4.3, 4.40, but he's raw as hell. You know, grabby, gets beat. And this is the one thing, you can't bring me a corner who doesn't have a career interception in college. You don't bring him to me. Don't bring him to me. I'm not the guy you want to see when the dude doesn't have a career interception in college. That's a problem for me, because there's too many trash ass quarterbacks in college football, and it's too easy to just be in the right place at the right time. Because unless you a stud corner, they're coming after your ass. You getting targets. So you telling me you didn't turn around one time and it was a bad throw, it was back shoulder fade, and the quarterback threw the bitch inside and you didn't pick it off? You know how many times we see that shit in college football? You didn't do that one time. You didn't look up, somebody batted the ball in the air, and that shit's coming straight to you and you pick it off. You didn't do that one time in college? I got a problem with that, bro. No interceptions in his career. I mean, I got a problem with that. This is an overdraft. He's raw as shit. A lot of tools. You don't take raw prospects in the 4th round like this, though. This is a guy you take in the 5th or the 6th round. Let's continue with your guys where you just go, Tommy Eichenberg in the 5th. And I'm going to give them a bit of grace here because their head coach is a linebacker, and maybe he sees something in Tommy Eichenberg. You know what I liken him to? Josie Jewell. And we didn't think Josie Jewell would be as effective as a linebacker as he's ultimately been for the Denver Broncos. So maybe there's a chance that people are underselling Tommy Eichenberg because the athletic profile isn't there and they don't think he's going to be able to do this or do that. And then he could have a Josie Jewell-like impact. And maybe Antonio Pierce sees that. But Tommy Eichenberg doesn't feel like a guy that's going to impact your roster all that much as a, defensive player. They took him in the 5th round. Okay. I mean, it's not terrible value here. I'm not upset about him going in the 5th round, but pretty sure there were other players on the board that might have been a little bit better. Maybe being able to step in and help you a little bit better. But okay. Dylan Laub, running back out of New Hampshire. I actually like this pick a lot. He's a jack of all trades. He does a little bit of everything. I think his best attribute is his ability to catch the football out of the backfield, but he can run it. He can catch it a lot. Really good out of the backfield, as I mentioned. He's almost like another receiver. He can return kicks. So he can do a little bit of everything. Here's the problem with Dylan Laub. I was looking for a speed running back to complement the two that you already have. You got the kid from Georgia that you drafted a couple of years ago. Big physical runner, not a top-end speed guy, though, right? You added Alexander Madison this offseason after losing Josh Jacobs. Again, not a top-end speed guy. I was hoping you would complement them with a guy that could run. And Dylan Laub isn't a guy that can flat out fly. So a little disappointed in that regard. Like the player, the fit to me would have been better if this was a guy that was running a 4.4 something, not a 4.5 something. But I like the player a lot. Trey Taylor out of Air Force is a physical safety that'll come down and hit you. He's got good bloodlines. Ed Reed is his cousin. He can make plays. I don't hate this selection here in the 7th round. I don't. You can develop him, and he may be able to help you as a defender down the road. And in the meantime, he'll help you on special teams. And then I loved MJ Devonshire. I thought he'd be a 5th round pick. I think this is tremendous value. One of the better punt returners in this draft. A guy with high ball production. I don't necessarily love all of his tape as a defender, and he's a bit undersized. And I think ultimately that's what pushed him down the draft board. But he can play inside. He can play outside. He can return punts. Heavy ball production. I think he had 5 interceptions or so this year. I like MJ Devonshire a lot. And I think he's got a chance to actually be really solid in this league. And I thought he was a 5th round type of guy. 5th round, no later than 6. You get him in the 7th. I think that's tremendous value. So all in all, this was a C draft for me with the Raiders. A C. Just too many reaches in pivotal rounds where you got to get guys that can come in, contribute right away, and play at a high level. I'm not sure about DJ Glaze. I'm not sure about the Camarian Richardson. Hell, I'm not even sure about Tommy Eichenberg. And these are 3 big picks for you, especially Camarion Richardson and DJ Glaze. Like those two, those feel like reaches to me. Anyway, so that's the Raiders. Get to the next team up, and it's the Denver Broncos. They come in 3rd in this division. And this is a big draft, as I mentioned already, for George Patton, their GM. He's been awful. Every step has been a misstep since he's taken over. And it started with hiring Nathaniel Hackett, thinking that you were going to get Aaron Rodgers. That was a disaster. Then trading away all the assets and then paying this ridiculous contract for Russell Wilson. And look, I was in favor of it when they did it. It's revisionist history to look back and say, oh, what a joke. What a terrible deal. Yeah, it's terrible now because Russell Wilson wasn't a great fit for who you brought in to coach him. But it just didn't work, right? And you doubled down on that mistake by hiring Sean Payton. Like, Sean Payton isn't going to get the most out of it. Like, you should have said, you know what? I made a mistake. And this might ultimately save his job. So we'll see. But to me, the right thing to do in that situation was, okay, I hired the wrong coach. We got to get Russell Wilson to play good football here. We invested way too much. Excuse me. We gave up too many draft picks. We paid him too much money for this shit not to work. So let's go get a coach that's going to fit with Russell Wilson and get the most out of him. Now, they probably needed a culture change. They probably needed a locker room change because Russ was running the show. He was running the building. He was bringing his people into the building. You know, he was parking where he wanted to park. There was no structure. So shit needed to change. But Peyton was never going to be a Russell Wilson guy because Wilson's game doesn't fit Sean Payton's coach style. So that was a disaster waiting to happen. And then you give up picks for Sean Payton because he was retired. All these coaches that exist out here, you go after the guy that you have to give up something to get. You've already given up enough to get Russell Wilson. And so far, it's been a disaster with Sean Payton as your coach. Now, we'll see what happens this year. Now that he's starting to get some of his guys in there. And this draft is, to me, a very big representation of Sean Payton, or the kind of guys that he likes. If this draft doesn't work, I think George Patton needs to be fired. And so 2 years from now, we'll know if Bo Nix is any good. We'll know if Troy Franklin is any good. We should know if Jonah Ellis is any good. We'll know, or we should at least. And if we are not getting franchise quarterback vibes from Bo Nix, he looks like a backup more so than a starter, George Patton has to go. Every single thing he's done has been awful to this point. Anyway, let's go through this draft. Bo Nix. I said this probably while Oregon was still playing football games, that there is no better fit quarterback and team and scheme than Bo Nix with Sean Payton. There were a lot of rumors about Sean Payton wanting to trade up to get, XYZ. I think Bo Nix was a quarterback all along, and they were blowing smoke. They wanted to sit right at 12, and so they wanted people to think they wanted to trade up, and they wanted people to think that they were looking to be aggressive, when all along I think they wanted Bo Nix. Maybe they wanted J.J. McCarthy. I think he would have been an even better fit than Bo Nix. But because of his athleticism and a bit stronger arm. But Nix is, to me, he's a Drew Brees type of quarterback. Quick release, super accurate underneath, great distributor. Doesn't have the strongest arm, neither did Drew Brees, right? He's a Sean Payton quarterback. And this should work. In theory, this should work. They didn't have a second-round pick because of all the shit that they've given up. Whether it's Russell Wilson, whether it's Sean Payton, they've given up a ton of draft capital. So they didn't have a second. But they drafted Jonah Ellis in the third. Depending on who you ask, this is maybe a reach. I actually like Jonah Ellis. High production, had 12 sacks this year in the Pac-12. I thought the Pac-12, from a pass rushing standpoint, was the best conference in college football this year. The best pass rushers, and it played itself out in the draft. The first defensive player taken in the entire draft was a Pac-12 pass rusher, right? In Latu, who I thought was, you could argue, one of the best defensive players in this year's draft class, and he was the best pass rusher in my estimation. I just didn't think he would go first. He's the most natural pass rusher. I'll say that. Ellis has a family bloodlines, right? His brother is currently in the league. His brother got drafted by Caden Ellis by the Saints. I think he's in Atlanta right now. I think Caden Ellis is in Atlanta, if I'm not mistaken. Their father is Luther Ellis, former longtime defensive lineman of the Detroit Lions. So these bloodlines run deep. This guy knows how to get to the quarterback, man. I like Jonah Ellis. I think he can get to the quarterback. It's not explosive or dynamic, and he's not going to wow you and knock your socks off, but there's just certain guys who just know how to get to the quarterback, and I think he's one of them. So we'll see if it works out for him. Troy Franklin, I was not a fan of Troy Franklin. You know, there were a lot of people. Troy Franklin is the fifth best receiver in this draft. I was like, says who? Not me. Right? And there was all this Troy Franklin love. He's a fringe first round. I said, fringe first round pick says who? Not me. He ain't even a second round pick. Hell, I don't know if I would touch him in the third either. He went in the fourth, where he was supposed to go. He's a day 3 receiver. Skinny, frail, struggles against physicality. He can run. But he's a Sean Payton type receiver. He reminds me a lot of Traquan Smith of the Saints, right? And I love that they paired him up with his former college teammate in Bo Nix. I do love that. It's a good fit, especially after trading away Jerry Jeudy. You get some more speed and a guy that may be able to help you take the top off the defense. So that's a good pick. Chris Abrams-Drain, he was one of my underrated corners in this draft class. He's a tough guy. He can play inside or outside. I think he has a chance to be like the gem of this draft class. When they look back at these picks that they had in day 3 and they say who of these guys outperformed their draft status, I think it's got a chance to be Chris Abrams-Drain. I like him a lot. Love his physicality. He plays the football. There's just a toughness and a grit that I like. And he's athletic enough to, I think, play at a high level in this league. I like the pick a lot. I'll just say that. Audric Estime, running back from Notre Dame. I'm a Notre Dame fan. I can tell you all of his faults. I can tell you all of his strengths. What I can tell you is forget about all of that. We know what he ran at the combine. He cleaned it up a bit at his pro day, but he's not a fast dude, okay? He's fast enough for his size. All you need to know is he's a Sean Payton back. Sean Payton likes him. He wants the guy that can, and they got Javonte Williams. That's the guy. That's the lead dog, right? But he likes those Samaje Perine. He likes those Mark Ingram type backs, right? Jamal Williams type dudes. That's what Audric Estime is, right? 5'11", 220, physical, downhill. That's a Sean Payton. Like, people get it misconstrued like Sean Payton don't like running the football. That's one of the biggest misnomers about Sean Payton. No, he want to run that bitch. And if you let him, you let him get a 14-point lead, he going to run that bitch on you. I like this pick in the 5th round. I actually think it's right where he was supposed to go. And he's going to be a really good fit with Sean Payton. Devon Vele, wide receiver out of Utah. Raw. Big guy, 6'4", 205, sub 4.5, ran like a 4.47 or something like that at the combine. Really, actually solid route runner. Not explosive, though, right? Like, in his movement skills, not quick, in and out of breaks and cuts. But there's some workable traits here. Like, he could turn into a better version of Tim Patrick, who I love, and he just hasn't been able to stay healthy the last couple of years. He could turn into the new Tim Patrick in Denver. He just needs some time, right? He's not ready to come in and help, right? Just like Tim Patrick wasn't ready to help right away. Give Devon Vele some time. He could actually turn into something. And then Nick Gargujo, I actually thought he would go earlier. Thought he would go in the 5th round or so. All right. Guy that started out his career, I want to say he was at an Ivy League school. transferred over to South Carolina, played and mixed it up with the big boys inside, can play guard, can play center. He's like 6'5", 313, something like that. Big dude, man, physical. I thought he did a really good job in the SEC, right? And I think he's got some solid movement skills. I was shocked that he was here. A guy that could play center and guard. Actually shocked that he was still available in the 7th round. So I thought it was a good pick. Overall, I thought this was a good draft by the Denver Broncos. I gave it a B-. I gave it a B-. This better be an impactful draft for George Patton, or off with his head. Off with his head. We move on to the next draft in the AFC West, and it's the Los Angeles Chargers. So this is all new, right? Everything's new in LA right now, and it probably needed to be wholesale changer. Everything feels like it's either Michigan or Raven used, right? They went shopping heavy at the Michigan Wolverine store for good reason, understandably so. And they went shopping heavy at the Baltimore Ravens store. Again, understandably so. All right. His brother is there. He trusts his brother. If he says, hey, this guy is legit, duh, my brother gave him the stamp of approval. So I'm going to go ahead and snatch him up. If he can play for my brother, he can play for me. So they got a new GM, right? Joe Ortiz, who they got from Baltimore. Go figure. They got Jim Harbaugh, who they got from Michigan. Go figure, right? They got new defensive coordinator Jesse Minter, who they got from Michigan. Go figure. And then, when you come back to the NFL, when you've been gone for a while and you come back, the first thing that you really want to do is you want to get the band back together. So, of course, he goes out and he gets his boy Greg Roman to run his offense. Of course. Why wouldn't he go get Greg Roman? They had tremendous success the last time he was in the NFL. Greg Roman was out of work for, was it the last 2 years or just 1 year? Probably just 1 year. I think the Ravens had just moved on from him this past offseason. So he's back in work. He's back with his old boy, right? So now you got to go get pieces that fit what Greg Roman does. I made the mistake of not considering the circumstances. Understand that after releasing wide receiver Mike Williams and trading away Keenan Allen, and knowing that the only real receiver you have left at this point is Josh Palmer, because the kid you drafted last year out of TCU stinks right now. And we'll see. Again, I'm not going to use the B word, okay? He's only going into his second year. I don't like putting that on people. And I here's the thing. He was overdrafted, okay? Johnston was overdrafted. It's not his fault that he was overdrafted, but you don't get to, you're not giving the money back that you get from being a first round pick, right? So you can't give back the expectations. When you get drafted in the first round, you need to perform like a first round wide receiver, and everybody matures at a different rate. And I say that all the time. He just doesn't look like a first round wide receiver. So I don't know if they'll ever get a return on that investment. That said, the good thing is you don't need him to be now, because your receivers are going to be reduced to next to nothing with Greg Roman there. Now the tight end position becomes the most important position. They're going to need to stockpile talent there, right? But getting Ladd McConkey, which feels like a Roman Wilson type of move for Jim Harbaugh, makes a ton of sense. Let's just go through this draft real quick. Joe Alt, number 1 pick for them, 5th overall. They want to run the football. And the guy that is the most fundamentally sound in this draft at the offensive line position, offensive tackle in particular, was Joe Alt. I thought they would want more of a man mover and just a destructive force up front. I was thinking more along the lines of the Alabama tackle, J.C. Latham, but Joe Alt works perfectly fine. Now you got two bookend tackles. And so they feel really good about their offensive line now. Ladd McConkey is a guy that I think has a higher ceiling than what we saw at Georgia. And if he can stay healthy, he can do some damage. Guy can get it in the hands of quickly. He can make things happen after the catch. You can hand it to him. He can stretch the field vertically if given an opportunity to. You can move him around the formation. I think it's a good pick there. Junior Colston, this is a steal in the third round. And, you know, this is like a coming home party for him. Jim Harbaugh comes to the league. I know Harbaugh thought, I would love to get my hand on Junior Colston, but he's not going to be there, when I'm ready to spend a pick on him, right? You'd have had to take him at 34. You're not taking him at 34 if you're the Chargers. So he probably didn't think he would get a chance to draft him. This guy was there in the third round. He was the third best linebacker in this draft, if you ask me, behind Peyton Wilson and Edgerrin Cooper. He was the third best linebacker to me. And Cooper went in the second round. Peyton Wilson went in the third round late, but we all found out why he went that late in the third round, right? So I was shocked at Junior Colston. I get it. He had the injury. He didn't perform during the off-season draft process. And so I get all of that. But come on, man. The tape speaks for itself. This was a steal in the third round. They got their field general. He's athletic. He's physical. He attacks the line of scrimmage. He knows Jim Harbaugh. He knows Jesse Minter. This is a perfect fit. Plug and play third round pick. What more could you ask for out of a third rounder, right? Fourth round, Justin Aboigbe, defensive lineman out of Alabama, had 7 sacks this year, but he reminds me a lot of a fellow Alabama defensive tackle, defensive lineman in Fedarian Mathis, who I think he came out and had like 10 sacks the year he came out, or whatever. It's some ridiculous number. And we know he's no pass rusher. Try hard guy, same way Fedarian Mathis was. The motor runs hot all the time. I don't think there is one redeeming quality, like one trait that stands above the rest other than just sheer effort, which is great. You love that, because that's something that either you have or you don't. You generally don't teach effort. You stress it, but a want to is usually innate. And he has it, but I don't see a lot of anything else. So to spend a fourth round pick, I could have found better uses for that pick, to be honest with you. But if you're looking for somebody that's going to be a physical presence on the defense, he might be your man. He might be your man. Tarheeb Still, cornerback out of Maryland. I think this is fine for him, right? I don't love him. I love the ball production, but he, again, another one of these dudes that doesn't really move the needle for me with any of his traits. He's not an overly big corner. He's not very fast. He's not super physical. So what is it exactly that you do now? He does take it away. I think he had 5 picks this year. He does take it away. He is looking for the football, but I don't know about him. Now, I do like this next pick, Cam Hart, as a Notre Dame Fighting Irish fan. A former wide receiver turned corner, tall guy, 6'4", good frame, 205 pounds or so, is getting better as a corner. I would like to see better ball skills, right, from a guy that's a former receiver, but that's going to come with better technique. And as he gets more comfortable playing the position, there could be something there. And the reason I love this pick for this, certain picks make more sense in certain situations. And for me, the reason why this pick makes a ton of sense here is the connection to Jim Harbaugh with a former wide receiver turned cornerback that he coached in college that ended up having a tremendous professional career, and that's one Dick Sherman. I think he sees a lot of Dick Sherman and Cam Hart. And he's saying to himself, if I can get this kid to play at that level, because he's got everything that Dick Sherman had. He's got the size, he's got the length, he can run. He's even faster than Dick Sherman was coming out of Stanford. Cam Hart wants to be better. He's going to put in the work. I think that's a really good pick. And I thought he would be a fringe day 2, right? Got it back into the 3rd, but he's going in the 4th round, Cam Hart. To get him here in the 5th, pretty good value, I'd say. Kamani Vidal, running back out of Troy, kind of fits what Jim Harbaugh is going to do, right? They can't have enough running backs. They've already gotten 2 dudes, if I'm not mistaken, J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards. I think both are in LA with the Chargers, if I'm not mistaken. So they went and doubled up from the Ravens store. And then they go get another guy, 5'8", 200, and 5 pounds or whatever. This guy's like a walking muscle. Kamani Vidal is, and he's not the fastest guy in the world, but he's physical. He'll run it. He'll slam it up in there. Has a nose for the end zone. I liked him at the combine, and he's another guy that they're going to throw in that running back mix. And you can never have enough backs when Greg Roman is your offensive coordinator. Can never have enough running backs. So just toss him in the mix and see what happens, right? It's not a bad pick, and that's good value. That's right around where I thought he would come off the board. Brendan Rice, interesting pick. I thought he'd go somewhere in the 6th round, somewhere in that neighborhood, 6th, 7th round. So this makes sense right here. You keep him out on the West Coast, and for a team that's not going to value the receiver position all that much, with Greg Roman being your offensive coordinator, makes a ton of sense. I think he's going to have an opportunity to not only make this football team, but to have an impact. And that goes for the next receiver, Cornelius Johnson out of Michigan. Again, another Wolverine, another guy that they know his profile. They know what he brings to the table. Big kid that can run. And while he's not a route runner, he can run. He's physical. And I look at him and I say, he can be the new Mike Williams from this standpoint. He'll go up and get the 50-50 ball. And he can run by defenders. So while his route running might not be the sharpest, he's going to run block. He's going to play special teams. He can go get the 50-50 ball. And right now, if you look at the Chargers roster, they got guys that can run. But do you really trust throwing the ball up to him? Like, Ladd McConkey can run, but I'm not throwing it up to him in a 50-50 situation. Like, go get it, big fella. Like, Ladd McConkey's 5'9" or whatever. He's not going to get anything. Quentin Johnston can run, but are you throwing it up to him? No. He plays like he used to. Like, I think he grew into, his frame. I think he was an undersized kid that just, I always like to joke and say, guys, go home one summer, go to sleep and wake up and they've grown 5-6 inches. He still plays like he's 5'8". He didn't play like he's 6'3" or whatever. Cornelius Johnson plays like his size, and he can run. So I like those 2 picks at the end. This was a solid B draft for the first draft of Joe Ortiz for the Los Angeles Chargers. It's a rock solid B. A lot of guys that I think not only are going to make this football team, which you expect most, if not all of these dudes to make the team, because you got a brand new regime in there. You're turning the roster over. So a lot of out with the old, in with the new. But I think a lot of these guys will have a lasting impact. Alt and McConkey and Colson and Hart and maybe Rice and Johnson. I could see having real pivotal roles on this team in the next 2 to 3 years, right? So I think it was a solid B draft for the Chargers. Moving right along to the team that I thought had the best draft in the AFC West. You already know who it is. It's the Kansas City Chiefs. And let me put some respect on their name. The 2-time Super Bowl defending Kansas City Chiefs. They had a really good offseason, re-signing Travis Kelce to a 2-year deal, getting back their all-world defensive tackle on a massive deal in Chris Jones. They were able to sign Hollywood Brown to a 1-year deal, and then you let them do this shit in the draft. First round, everybody mocked them Xavier Worthy, and you let them get Xavier Worthy. And you can blame Buffalo for this shit. Look, they may have gotten him anyway had they stayed at 32. But clearly they felt threatened that somebody else would take him. So they needed to get up. And instead of Buffalo saying, nah, man, I ain't doing business with your ass. I'm not going to help you beat me. They helped Kansas City get a dude that could be the next Tyreek Hill for them. Like, are you kidding me? Anyway, again, I've said this many times before, and I'll say it again. The draft makes bedfellows out of sworn enemies, right? You don't think that you would do business with this particular team, but if the price is right, and as a wise man once said, everybody's got a price. If the price is right, you'll do business. So they get Xavier Worthy. So they went from having essentially no speed last year, and the one guy that could run couldn't catch in Valdez-Scantling. So they went from having one guy with speed who couldn't catch to 2 guys that can flat out fly now in Hollywood Brown and Xavier Worthy. In the second round, they get Kingsley Suamataia, tackle out of BYU. I love this pick for them. He's going to end up starting for them at some point, whether it's this year or next year. He's going to start, and he's going to play well. Watch what I tell you. He's a little bit raw, still got a little ways to go in terms of a developmental standpoint, but everything. He's athletic, he's physical, he's got the right temperament. He's going to end up being really good for the Chiefs. Really good. One of my favorite tight ends in this entire draft was Jarrett Wiley. And anybody that's a Commanders fan knows when Washington brought him in for a top 30 visit, I did my work and I came back and I said, he's one of my new draft crushes. Look where the hell you let him get to. Are you effing kidding me? Seriously. Like, I thought he would go in the 4th round. So this is right around where I thought he'd be. 3rd, 4th round, somewhere in there, right? You let him get to Kansas City. Essentially, this is a 5th round pick we're talking about, folks. Because this is the 31st pick in the 4th round the Chiefs spent on Jarrett Wiley. Travis Kelce is winding down. He's getting towards the end and you're going to let them pick a guy that could be the successor to Travis Kelce. Learn from one of the best. He's got an athletic profile that is just as, if not better than Travis Kelce. He's a tremendous pass catcher right now. He's not a great blocker, but he's not afraid to stick his nose in there. If he learns from Kelce, he could become Kelce. And you let him get him. They crushed it with these first 3 picks. And then cherry on top with their 2nd, 4th round pick, 2 picks later, Jaden Hicks, defensive back out of Washington State. I had him as my 3rd best safety in this draft. My number 1 safety was Tyler Nubin out of Minnesota. I like Cole Bishop out of Utah as my 2nd best safety, and those were the top 2 safeties taken, if I'm not mistaken, Newbin went to the Giants, I believe, and then Bishop went to the Bills, both second-round picks, right? I thought this kid would be somewhere like maybe everybody didn't see him in the same light as I did and have him as the third best. But I thought he'd go maybe the fourth or the fifth best safety come off the board wise. Fourth round? What? And here's the thing. He's young. He's a redshirt sophomore out of Wazoo, right? Here's the thing with this kid. Tremendous ball skills, right? So fluid in his movement skills. Big kid too, like 6'2", 205. Can play the football, come up and hit you. He looks the part. Find me a team that develops defensive backs better right now. Right now. Right now. Right now. Right now. Right now. Find me a team in the league right now that develops defensive backs better than the Kansas City Chiefs. I'll wait. And you let them get their hands on this kid in the fourth round? He'll be a Pro Bowler in 2 or 3 years. If the trend continues in Kansas City, he'll be a Pro Bowler in 2 or 3 years. Maybe even an All-Pro. Can't say I didn't warn you. Hunter Norzad in the 5th round. I love this pick. He reminds me a lot of Nick Allegretti, who you lost in free agency to the Commanders, as a guy that's going to come in here. Probably not going to start for you. You don't need him to. He's going to be that guy that's the first offensive lineman off the bench in a year or two, right? Where if we got an injury and we need somebody to fill in, Hunter Norzad will fill in for you very amicably and admirably, and you'll feel good about him. That's the kind of guy they're in a position to draft that guy in the 5th round. Kamal Haddon. Again, I don't like the Chiefs getting their hands on talented secondary members because they coach them up and they get the most out of these dudes. This is a guy with tremendous ball production. I think he had 8 interceptions the last 2 years, if I'm not mistaken. Now, why is he here in the 6th round? Maturity issues is what we've been told. A lot of teams were turned off by this kid during the process and what they turned up in talking to people. And it's not that he's a bad dude. He just might be immature. You know, everybody develops at a different, stage. And if there's an organization that can handle someone that's a little rough around the edges, it's a team that's won the last 2 Super Bowls. It's a team with Andy Reid as the head coach. I'm not telling you Kamal Haddon is going to be, the next best thing since sliced bread in Kansas City, but I wouldn't be shocked if we're hearing his name. They're not afraid to play young guys in the secondary. I wouldn't be shocked if we heard his name this year as a rookie. And in a major game, he steps up and picks off, a big-time quarterback, and you go, who? Haddon? Who's this guy? And then C.J. Hansen, developmental offensive lineman. He won't make the team, but they'll work with him. And this is an A, man. This draft is a damn A. And again, they know what they need. They know what they're looking for. They know what they want. And somehow the entire league let them get the things that they needed. They need tackle, right? They won the Super Bowl with Donovan Smith, for crying out loud, starting at left tackle. They won the Super Bowl with 2 of the most penalized tackles in the league, in Smith and Taylor. And you let them get Kingsley Suamataia? They won the Super Bowl with the inability to hurt you offensively throwing the football because they had nobody. They couldn't stretch the field vertically because guys couldn't catch. And you let them get Hollywood Brown and now Xavier Worthy? Travis Kelce is slowing down. He's winding down his career. He signed a 2-year extension. He's still Travis Kelce, but Eventually, he's going to have to pass the baton to somebody, and you let them draft Jarrett Wiley? And the Chiefs just churn out secondary members. So if you let them get talent on the back end, they'll churn them out, and they won't pay them because they don't have to, right? They'll draft the kid from UVA, Juan Thornhill, let him play good ball, and then ship him out. All right, you go get your money elsewhere. They drafted L'Jarius Sneed, coached him up, got him to an all-pro level. All right, go get your money elsewhere, bro. Why can they do that? Because this is what they do. They drafted the kid in the first round out of UW. He's the best nickel in the league by a mile. By a mile. Chiefs are number one in the AFC West with their draft. So now let's make some social media maneuvers. I'm a Midnight Marauder. Y'all know what it is. Let's get to the comment section. Before we do, as always, let me set the foundation for you. Set the scene, if you will. If you're out there, you want your comment read on the air, use the hashtag LouieTLive to have your comment read if it is pertinent and time permits. If you want to ensure that your comment is read, super chats are the best way to do so. That said, let's get to the comment section. And I just realized that we didn't go back to game one from tonight. And we're going to do that here. I'm going to see if somebody else brings it up. If nobody brings it up, I'll go back to it. And we'll touch on it. So, start the night off with Christopher McLaughlin, my guy. Chris, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, and thank you for your support as always. Who writes, "Hey Lou, hope all is well with you and the fam. Likewise, as always, I really truly do appreciate you." Who writes, 2 questions. 1, which team do you think matches up better to Boston in the finals and why? And 2, how much responsibility does Herbert hold in the Chargers making the playoffs once in 4 years as quarterback? So let's start with the first question. What team do you think matches up better for Boston in the finals and why? So let me touch on this game. Let me answer your question first before I go off, talk about the game one, and then forget to answer your question. You're assuming Boston's going to make it to the finals. So am I. Okay. So I don't think you're wrong, even though they got pushed tonight. And this honestly, people kind of dismissed Indiana. I'm actually surprised in how disrespectful people were with Indiana. When they beat the New York Knicks, the line came out and it was disrespectful. And I think there was an immediate knee-jerk reaction because people weren't expecting the Pacers to make it. They were so looking forward to Knicks Celtics. It's a much sexier matchup. But if you've watched the NBA, if there's a team that can outgun the Celtics were one of the highest scoring teams in the league this regular season because of their 3-point prowess. If there's anybody that can outgun them, that can go toe-to-toe with them and say, hey, if you want to fire off shots, we can shoot with the best of them, it's Indiana. And we saw it tonight. That said, if we are to assume that Boston's going to win this series and advance to the finals, which I'm going to go ahead and assume, I shouldn't assume because I've been wrong a bunch this postseason thinking that we know when we have no idea, right? This postseason has tricked us numerous times. Not us, me. And let me speak for myself. The best matchup for them is probably Dallas. I still don't love the lack of experience from the side of Minnesota. 2, Minnesota isn't a high octane offense. They're the best defensive team. Now, could that present problems for Boston? Sure, it could. But also, if Boston goes off and makes 18 threes, Minnesota can't keep up because they're not a three-point shooting team like that. Okay. So I could see Minnesota being a really good matchup, but I think ultimately, if Cat's your second best player, which he is, I could see the Celtics getting him into foul trouble. I could see him being on the bench and him not being on the court when his partner in crime, Anthony Edwards, needs him. I could see him being on the bench with 3 fouls and having to sit for the final 8 minutes of the first half because he couldn't keep his hands to himself, or he's reaching over the back for an offensive rebound. We like, bro, what are you doing? You already got 2 fouls. You got to be smarter than that stupid shit. And then him doing this incredulous, like, oh my God, I can't believe they called a foul. No, dummy, you did foul. I can't see that winning out in the finals. But Dallas has the experience. Kyrie's been to the finals multiple times. Luka's been to the conference finals before. This will be his second conference finals. I think they've got a veteran team. A number of those guys have played. They got some young guys too. The Mavs do. Lively is a rookie. PJ Washington is, he's relatively young. This is his first real foray into the postseason. Gafford has been around the block, but I don't know if he's played meaningful games into, late May into June. I don't think that he's done that in his career to this point. But you still got Hardaway. I don't know if is Maxi Kleber coming back. He might be done for the playoffs. I just think the combination of Kyrie and Luka is greater than Cat and Ant-Man. And ultimately, that's what I think it'll come down to. And I'll say the same thing with, Tatum and Brown. Ant-Man and Cat aren't equal to that of Brown and Tatum. Whereas Luka and Kyrie, you could argue are greater than, but they're at least equal to those two guys when they're on, So I think it's the Mavs. But it doesn't matter who comes out of the West. They're going to give Boston a run for their money. And I'll tell you this about Minnesota, because they're tough and they're gritty, if they can defend the 3-point line and force Boston to not shoot it well, they could easily beat the Boston Celtics. We saw what happened tonight. Let's talk about tonight real quick. Game 1, Celtics held on for dear life and escaped in overtime in game 1. How many threes did they make in this game? Let me check. Feels like a game in which I can tell you they didn't shoot it well. I don't need to check the stats to tell you that they didn't shoot it well, but they made them when they counted, obviously. But the Celtics were 15 of 45. They shot 45 3-point shots. They shot 99 shots the entire game. Almost half of them were 3-point attempts. Conversely, the Pacers shot the same 99 shots and only 35 of them. So roughly a third of them were threes, right? I mean, that's the NBA we live in now. So, You know, that those numbers shouldn't scare you, but just know that's who Boston is. And when they shoot 33%, having attempted 45 threes, they can get beat. And so this game should have been won by the Indiana Pacers. Boston jumped out to a 12-0 lead to start the game off. Yada, yada, yada. You know how that goes. But here's the thing. You know Indiana can score and score in bunches. When Tyrese Halliburton is aggressive, and he was tonight, they're a different animal, as we saw. I think the Pacers had 7 players in double figures. Let me fact check that. But that's what they do, right? They're set up to have 7 dudes in double figures. They had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 guys in double figures, right? They're set up for that. Obi Toppin was outstanding, especially in the first half. He came in and he had 9 points in 7 minutes. Miles Turner, like, you can't waste a 23, 10 rebound, 9 for 13, 3 for 4 from deep performance from Miles Turner. You can't waste that if you're Indiana. You just can't afford to do that, right? Nembhard was really good, right, tonight. Made some timely shots late in the ball game, especially in the fourth quarter. You can't waste 15 points from Obi Toppin in 22 minutes off the bench. And you wasted it. That's a tough, bitter pill to swallow if you're Indiana. You were down 12-0. You were down for most of the first half. You come roaring back. You end up taking the lead, I think, late stages of the second quarter, I think. If I'm not mistaken, you go back and forth with Boston. Halliburton banks in a crazy 3 at the end of the first half, and I think you're only down 1 at the intermission. You come out, you take the lead. Boston goes on a run. They build their highest lead of the game of 13, and you walk them down, and you end up taking the lead in the fourth. And ultimately, you are in a position to win this game. Who didn't think after the Pacers went up 3, after Nembhard hits the step back on Al Horford to put him up 3, and then the Celtics go down the court and turn it over with, I don't know, let's call it 10 seconds left. They fouled, right? They had to foul. I want to say, no, they didn't turn it over. White went to the basket. I think he was looking for contact. To me, he should have just went up strong, because in that situation, once you blow by Naismith, he can't foul you. You're up 3. He knows a foul here is the absolute worst thing, because if he makes the shot and I foul him, they got a chance to tie the game up. So once he got by Naismith, he should have just went hard to the rack and say, I dare you to foul me, bro. He kind of went leaning into him, and Naismith gave him a little bump once he leaned into him, and it kind of threw his shot up. You got to make that shot, though. And then he missed. Then Tatum, typical Jason Tatum shit, he gets the ball. He's 2 feet from the basket. Instead of him going up strong, he takes a dribble and then shoots a fadeaway from like 12 feet away from the basket. I'm like, bro, what the? That's a tough shot. He doesn't make it. Now they got a foul. And there's 10 seconds left. And they had a foul to give. So now you got to foul again. And then the Celtics are able to force the turnover, which Carlisle, I thought he mismanaged the end of this game, because in that situation, I don't remember if they had a timeout left. I believe they did. I need you to draw up an inbounds play there. It's not like they were trapped in the corner in the hard place to inbound the ball or underneath the basket, bro, you were out on the side. Plenty of space. Set a pick, get some action, get somebody free, and get the damn ball inbounds. The best you can do is having a defender breathing down the neck of Pascal Siakam as you inbound the ball. Again, a cardinal sin is inbounding the ball back towards your basket. I mean, how stupid could you be? I put that on the coach, right? That was not a well drawn up situation, inbounding that basketball. You're up 3. All you got to do is inbound the ball and they foul you and make free throws. You are going to steal game 1. Well deserved, I may add. You made every big play down the stretch. And then you go and do that shit. Then, unlike Carlisle, Joe Mazzulla draws up a dime of a play where he gets the ball to the corner to Jaylen Brown, where even if they wanted to foul, which they weren't going to foul, I thought JJ Redick made a great point. He had already shown that he wasn't going to foul. He hadn't fouled earlier in series in the playoffs where teams had an opportunity to either tie or take the lead with a 3, and he didn't foul in those situations. Didn't foul against Milwaukee in that game that Middleton hit the 3 and sent it to overtime. They ultimately won that game, did the Pacers, but didn't foul in that situation. Didn't foul in the game against the Knicks when Nembhard hit that step back 3 and Brunson had a shot to tie the game up, right, with a 3, but he missed. And then tonight, Jaylen Brown gets the ball in the corner. It's a tough shot. And Pascal Siakam is right there. He did exactly what Shai Gilgeous-Alexander should have done against PJ Washington, right? Contest, just get in his face, but don't try to block it. Don't do anything. Just make it tough. He's already in the corner, and just make it tough. And if he makes it, you shake his hand, right? Make him make a shot. And Jaylen Brown made a shot. That's a hell of a shot. And he made it. You tip your cap. Obviously, then Halliburton needed to get a better shot. It was too much time left on the clock for you to not get a better shot than what he got, to end regulation. But once that game got tied, who didn't think that they were going to lose? They being the Pacers. Who didn't think they were going to lose the game? At that point, they had already lost in my mind. This game never should have made it to overtime. Never. You could blame Carlisle for not fouling. He's a no foul guy. Everybody's got a philosophical belief as to how you handle those situations. Hell, Joe Mazzulla, I thought he outsmarted himself. They're up 6. And he fouls up 6. No, I don't want them to get a 3. What the hell are you doing, bro? Let him shoot a 3. If he makes it, cool. They still got to foul you. Or even if they don't foul, right? And they get a stop and you're only up 3. Make it make sense to me, bro. So you stop the clock, give them a chance to knock down 2 free throws. And if they go down and play good defense, because I think there was still like just a shade under a minute left in the game or something like that. Maybe it was 30-something seconds. I might be tripping on the time here. But whatever it was, it backfired in his face. And I was glad because I'm like, what the fuck are you doing, bro? You foul McConnell. He makes the first. He misses the second. Then Tatum fouls Siakam. He makes both free throws. Or not Siakam. Oh, I think it was Obi Toppin. And he makes both free throws. And it's now a 3-point game. So the thing you were trying to not do, you did anyway. Because you decided to foul. It was stupid. But anyway, long story short, the Pacers should have won game 1. The Celtics did not shoot well. They had open looks. This is who they are. This is who they're always going to be. They're a make or miss team. If they're knocking down those threes, this game isn't even close. Al Horford, let me see how many he had, because he had a lot of good looks in this game, and he just wasn't making them. He made some big ones down the stretch, but for the most part, I'm gonna go with 3 of 8, something like that. 3 of 12 for Al Horford. So I was being nice. He was 3 of 12. He had some good looks. Of those 12 threes, I'd say 9 of them were probably wide ass open. He just didn't make them shits, right? Tatum, 2 of 8 from 3. Holiday, I thought he was the savior in this game, to be honest with you. He had 28. Like, this was one of the best games I've seen him play in the postseason for the Celtics. He was outstanding tonight. Derek White continues to struggle from deep. He was 3 of 8. That's not a terrible percentage, but we know he can shoot it much better than that. Jaylen Brown only made 1 3, and that's the one that sent it to overtime, right? He was 1 of 4 from deep. So, and they got nothing from their bench pretty much. Pritchard had a little stretch early in the first half, but he didn't really do much of anything in the second half. Cornette, he's going to give you a little something, but, in his limited minutes, he ain't going to do too much. Hauser, same thing. He went 0 of 2 from deep. That's the only reason he's in the game. If he can't knock down threes, what the hell good are you, right? So, all in all, this was the game to steal, right? They did not shoot it well, and they blew a couple of leads, and you had the lead up 3 with the ball. All you had to do was inbound it, shoot some free throws, just make one. You didn't even have to make both of them. You go up 4 because inbounding the ball and getting fouled with 10 seconds left, probably going to knock off at least a 1.3, right? So 8.7 seconds left. You go to the free throw line, make one, you're up 4. Just don't foul them, and you're probably going to win this game. Instead, you couldn't even inbound the ball. And I just want to say this. I'm a stickler, and I talk about this all the time when I talk about playoff basketball because it is important. You have to value the basketball. And if the Celtics had lost this game, we will be talking about some of the senseless turnovers. Jason Tatum had like 2 or 3 stupid, dumb turnovers. He gets the basketball, and I want to say it was Drew Holiday that's setting a pick for him, and he just assumes Holiday is going to roll off the pick and he can throw it to him. Holiday's still kind of stuck in the screening action, and he just throws the ball to nobody. Like, bro, what are you doing? What are you doing? Right? Look at me. What are you doing? Oh, you want to lose? Do you want to lose this game? I can say the same thing about the Pacers. Drew Holiday D's up. And to me, Tyrese Halliburton, and I love him. I love his game. I love when he's aggressive. He's a dynamite player, and he was outstanding tonight for stretches. But late in games, he has more turnovers for a guy that doesn't turn the ball over. Like, he will go the entire 48 minutes. He will play 40 of 48 minutes. He will have 13 assists, no turnovers, and we get to the final minute of the game, and he will turn it over twice. You go, bro, you haven't turned it over the entire night. Where is this coming from? He's dribbling by the sidelines. Like, they should have won this game. And Drew Holiday comes and bodies him up and D's him up, and he dribbles the ball out of bounds. What are you doing, dude? Seriously? That's what we're doing right now? You don't want to win? On the road, game 1, you played so well, you don't want to steal this game? You can't inbound the basketball with 10 seconds left? That's a bitter pill to swallow if you're the Pacers, man, because you earned that game. They made some big shots late. Every time Boston tried to get within striking distance, Nembhard would have stepped back, and Pascal Siakam would have stepped back, and they were knocking down these clutch shots. I want to say Naismith had a clutch jumper, and I'm like, damn, they really want this one. But they didn't. They did, but they didn't. That was the one to steal. When they lose this series, because they're going to lose this series, they're going to look back, and this is going to be one of those games they're going to be kicking themselves because they're probably going to lose this series 4-2. Okay? Probably going to lose this series 4-2. Might even lose it 4-1, right? Just depends on what Boston team shows up. Will they get back Kristaps Porzingis anytime soon? He's got to be getting close. My guess is game 4-ish. It'll take them a game or 2 to get back into the swing of things. But if they can, that was the one to steal. I think Boston will be more effective in game 2. They've shown that they'll lose at home. This was the one that they were supposed to lose. They've lost game 2 in each of the first 2 series. They were supposed to lose game 1. I expect them to come out sharper in game 2 and put their foot on the Pacers' necks in game 2. And then Indiana, I expect them to go home and win game 3, right? And then the question is, do you win game 4 and make it a series, or do you allow the Celtics to have a chance to close you out in 5? Right? That'll be the question. We'll see. The Celtics haven't lost a game on the road yet. That's going to change in this series. Indiana will beat them at home at least once. The question is, can they beat them at home twice? If they can, we got ourselves a series, and this may go 7. If they can't, this thing could be over in 5, definitely 6. Definitely 6. So, 2, your second question, how much responsibility does Herbert hold in the Chargers not only making the playoff once in 4 years? Look, he's not blameless in all of this. Trust me, there's this narrative out there about Justin Herbert that, he's got a losing record, as a starter and this, that, and the third, and, yada. I don't see it with Herbert. Well, then you haven't been watching. If the numbers speak for themselves. If you've watched Justin Herbert, you know how good of a quarterback he's been and how little support he's gotten from the Chargers, specifically on the defensive side of the football. You know how much of the onus has been put on him to carry the load, to have to score damn near 40 just to win a ball game, because 36 wasn't enough, because 33 wasn't enough, because 34 wasn't enough, because 30 wasn't enough. Like, do you know how hard it is to score 30 in the league? Do you know how hard it is to score 30 and still lose? It's a gut-wrenching feeling. And I don't know if there's been a quarterback who has felt that feeling more than Justin Herbert over the first 4 years of his career. I'd love to know, what is the Chargers points per game given up average in his starts, and in the games in which he scored 30 or more, he's led the Chargers offense to 30 or more points. How much have they given up in those games, and how many times was it not enough? Look, I'm not telling you that he is blameless in all of this. As I mentioned, there have been games where he didn't show up. The Cowboys game on Monday night, I think that was this past year, if I'm not mistaken. Might have been last year or the year before. Let's see. I think it was the year before. But it was a Monday night game. Cowboys played the Chargers. Justin Herbert was awful in that game. He was awful. They lost to the Chiefs on a Thursday night, and he throws a 99-yard pick six to Jalen. His last name starts with a W. Watkins? I don't remember his last name. But he was a rookie, number 35. We've talked about that play in particular. Their tight end, Gerald Everett, was asking to come out of the game. He was the reason they were even down there. He was gassed. They told him to stay in the game as if they were going to run away from him and let him catch his breath or something. And then they ran a route that specifically made him the primary read, and he was dog tired. And Herbert expected him to be in a specific position. He didn't make it there because he was winded, and the ball went right to that corner, and he picked it off, and it changed that whole game. They would have won that game. Anyway, Herbert's made his share of mistakes, but they're not even in a bunch of these ball games without him. Again, he shares some of the blame, but trust me when I tell you, if not for Herbert, the Chargers aren't even relevant. Like, they're not even a team that you even think about, and they don't have a chance. A lot of times they're only in the game because of Justin Herbert. They're only in the game because of him. And you see some of the ridiculous games that he has to put up. I think about the game last year against the Lions. I think Herbert threw for like 400 yards and like 4 touchdowns, and the Chargers gave up like 40 points and like 5 Jared Goff touchdown passes or whatever, some crazy shit like that, and they lost the game. And Herbert went off, and it wasn't enough. Right? That's like that to me is the microcosm of what Herbert's career has been. And that sucks. I mean, it is what it is. Christopher McLaughlin, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. My guy, Chris, writes, hey, Lou, 2 questions. He says, 1, with the NFL testing optical tracking, how long, if at all, till we don't have human officiating for NFL games and why? 2, who do you see this season as the most improved teams in the NFC, AFC, and why? So I'm going to be honest with you. I don't think we'll ever get to a day where the human element doesn't exist from an officiating standpoint. I can't see, like, you know how long they've been talking about bots for the strike zone in Major League Baseball? I don't know if I won't say ever see it, but there needs to be a human element involved. I think the further you get away from humans being involved, whether right or wrong, it feels less and less like a real sport, to me at least. There needs to be that human error and that human element involved, right? You can't have officials that are robots calling pass interference because it's a subjective call, right? It's not like a delay a game where as soon as the clock hits 0, a robot official says, hey, you didn't get the snap off in time. Or that robot official is standing right down the line, and if somebody's lined up slightly over the football, it's a offsides penalty, right? Or if there's an illegal formation, it's able to see that. But you're telling me they're going to be able to make a judgment call down the field 40 yards with 2 guys jockeying for the football, pass interference or not? I just can't see the game. Balls and strikes in baseball, it's more cut and dry. There's a strike zone. Okay, you got a robot for that. First downs, we've heard them kind of kicking that idea around. They're not going to do it this year, but they may ultimately introduce, a machine that is able to precisely to the inch determine whether it's a first down or not. Cool. I don't necessarily have an issue with that. We talk about bad spots all the time, this, that, and the third, all right, whatever. But I don't think you can ever have, especially football, basketball too. I don't think you can ever have a game where the human element can't exist because there's too many subjective calls. Baseball is a little bit more cut and dry. Is it foul? There's a line that determines whether it's foul or fair, right? If it hits the foul pole, it's a fair ball, right? There's a thick white line that determines if it's fair or foul. Like there's no subjectivity in baseball. Only balls and strikes are subjective. And there's a strike zone, and if you want to replace the umps for that, fine, knock yourself out. You can't replace NBA officials because blocks and charges, subjective call. Okay. You can't replace NBA officials because the technical foul aspect. What, are you going to argue with a robot? Right? You don't like a call? You argue with a robot? I mean, you can't argue with a robot, right? Like, there needs to be that human element. Same with football, right? Pass interference. Was it a holding penalty or not? Holding takes place on every play, right? I can never see that taking place. I do think they're going to introduce that first down line, machine where it determines if it's a first down or not, where the ball's spotted. They're going to get rid of the the chains and all of that shit. I do think that's coming. Give it another year or two for them to perfect it and get it where they want. But that's coming. But you're never going to replace the officials, I don't think. Number two, who do you see this season as the most improved teams in the NFC, AFC, and why? So I think the most improved team in the NFC is probably going to be the Chicago Bears, would be my guess. You could make an argument too for the Atlanta Falcons getting Kirk Cousins. Like, the sole reason they weren't in the playoffs last year is because they didn't have competent quarterback play. You put Kirk Cousins on the Atlanta Falcons last year, and not only do they win the division, you could argue they might have been a top 3 seed, right? They could have been vying for a second home game. They wouldn't have been the number 1 seed in the NFC, but when you go look at the games that they lost last year and how they lost them, you put competent quarterback play out there and they probably win the vast majority of those games. You're probably talking about a 12-win season for the Falcons last year. But you say most improved, meaning they came a long way. I'm looking at the Bears and saying they're day and night better than what they were at the quarterback position, at the receiver position, defensively with Montez Sweat coming, and again, he was there last year, but just kind of adding in some of those pieces, keeping some of those guys intact. I just think they're in a position to win right now, personally, if you ask me. So I'd say the Bears in the NFC. I just want to make sure I'm not leaving out any other teams in the NFC before we go over. And like I said, Atlanta, I don't think anybody else qualifies to my knowledge. Then you get to the AFC, and I think kind of going through all the teams in my head and, the moves that have been made. And, this is going to sound crazy. I know this is going to sound crazy, but this team won their division last year. They won a playoff game, but I think the Houston Texans are the most improved team. I know that sounds crazy, right? Because I'm talking about a division-winning team and the team that won a playoff game. But when you look at what they've done, adding Stephon Diggs, adding Danielle Hunter to what they already had, right? Those are some serious moves, like game-changing moves. Who added that kind of firepower in the AFC on each side of the football? Danielle Hunter is a 13, 14, 15, possibly upwards of 16 sack type of guy when he's healthy. How many did he have last year? What was that number, like 15 or 16 last year? Danielle Hunter. 16 and a half sacks last year. Okay. Like, you just added a dude, you subtracted a guy who got you double digits for the first time in his career, and Jonathan Gennard. And he had a really good season. He might have had, 11 and a half sacks or whatever, 12 sacks maybe. I don't know. You just added a dude 16 and a half sacks across from the guy that won Defensive Rookie of the Year in Will Anderson Jr. I think they added a corner too. Because they had Steven Nelson, right? Texans free agent additions. I think they added a corner too, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. So they added Danico Autry 2? Like, I know he's older, but he's so underrated and he's still playing at a high level. They added CJ Henderson at corner. We'll see what he does for them. I don't, man. I think it might be the Texans, to be honest with you, man. Adding Daniil Hunter, D'Amico Autry. They added Azeez Al-Shire at linebacker. I forgot about him, right? They re-signed Derek Barnett, which is a good move. They brought back Mario or Noah Brown. They brought back their tight end. They signed Jeff Okudah. I think that's a really low risk, high reward type of move. Interested in seeing how that works out for him. Dalton Schultz is back. That was a big one. I know that's not an actual upgrade. He was there last year. I'm well aware. Desmond King is back. But he wasn't on their team last year. They bring him back. He was there, in the past. So I don't know. I could be overlooking some moves that have been made by other teams. I'm thinking about the Ravens. To me, didn't get better. The Bengals haven't gotten any really better. I'm just thinking about some of the better teams in that. The Bills definitely didn't get better this offseason. The Dolphins, I don't think they've gotten better necessarily, right? Losing Christian Wilkins doesn't make you a better football team. The Jets are, you could argue they got better, but I actually thought their roster was loaded last year and would have loved to have seen what they would have done if Rodgers would have stayed healthy. They did add, though, future Hall of Fame tackle. They added a reliable tackle in Morgan Moses on the opposite side. And they did add Mike Williams at wide receiver. So they did get better. And if I'm not mistaken, they added Eric Armstead, too, as a defensive tackle, the Jets. If I'm not mistaken, the 49ers released him and he went to join his ex-defensive coordinator in Robert Saleh. So the Jets have made some interesting moves, and I think they've gotten a lot better, too. But I think I still might take the Texans there, which is crazy because we're talking about a team that won their division last year and won a playoff game. But yeah, I think I'd say you could argue it's the Chargers with all of the moves that they've made, but I don't think they're a better team without Mike Williams and Keenan Allen and so forth and so forth. So we'll see. I'll go with the Texans in the AFC and the Bears in the NFC. Love haha history. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Love haha history writes, sorry, off subject. I'm watching the Big Pooh interview right now. Fabulous, man. I appreciate that. I really enjoyed that. And it's something that I'm going to try to aim to do more of, right? Have guests on. And I just love chopping it up with people who share the same passion I do for specific topics, whether it's music, sports, etc. I just find, those topics, those conversations to be really fruitful for me, at least. I can't speak for anybody else, what you glean from something, or I just find those conversations. If me and him, if that wasn't recorded and we just had that conversation, I would have enjoyed it just the same, right? If there was no benefit for me on the other end of that, me and him just talking off camera for that hour and 45 minutes or whatever, I would have enjoyed it all the same. So I loved it. I enjoyed it. And I'm glad that you had a chance to check it out and you enjoyed it as well. So let's see. So I see y'all are talking about holding happens on every play and saying you hate when people say it. It's true. Like, Is it a bit of an exaggeration? Yeah. Right. If the ball's thrown in 0.5 seconds, is a hold taking place that quickly? Maybe, maybe not. But you could call holding on just about every single snap, bro. Seriously. Like, I get it though. You know, it's an expression that is overused. You're not wrong. But if someone were to say to you, if we went through every, let's say there are 75 offensive snaps for a team in a game, and we went through every one of those offensive snaps, you're telling me that you wouldn't be able to find holding on somewhere outside on the perimeter with a receiver, or with a tight end trying to block a defensive end or edge rusher, or inside the trenches, or with the tackle. You're telling me somewhere you're not going to find a holding penalty. Like, it's going to be tough for you to not find holding somewhere on that play. It just doesn't get called on everything, and it shouldn't get called on every single play. If it doesn't have anything to do with the actual outcome of the play, you don't need to throw the flag. Okay. You don't need to throw the flag, but anyway, I digress. So you don't see it though. You say you didn't call it. You don't see it on every play. You as an official, your eyes can't be in a million different places at once. You know, there's certain things that you're looking at and you may not catch it on that particular play. But then somebody may come up to you and say, bro, he's holding me on every play, kind of putting that bug in your ear. So now you're looking and then you see it, right? And then you throw the flag. It's usually the ones that are obvious that gets called. But anyway, I digress. Let's get to our final segment of the show. And of course, that is garbage time. So, Devontae Parker retired yesterday from the NFL after signing a deal with the Eagles this offseason. I actually was excited for that. Like, not happy that the Eagles got him, of course, but I thought he'd be a great fit. And, you know, at this stage of his career, him being the third or really the fourth option behind the two receivers and Dallas Goedert, I thought it would be a tremendous fit for him. And he's like, you know what? I'm done. I want to spend more time with my family. I just don't have it in me anymore. On one end, I'm like, good, because I didn't want to see what that looked like with the Eagles. On the other hand, I'm like, damn, you're done, huh? But, you know, I wonder how people view his career. Remember, this was a former first-round pick. Did he ever truly live up to the first-round billing coming out of Louisville when he was drafted by the Miami Dolphins? Did he ever truly live up to being a first-round pick? How many? Let's guess. I want to take a guess. I don't know the answer to this. How many 1,000-yard seasons do you think Devontae Parker had? I think he played, let's say he played 8 seasons. I don't know the exact number. It's somewhere in the neighborhood of 7 to 9 seasons in the NFL. How many? Let's go with 8. It's in the middle. How many 1,000-yard seasons do you think he had? I don't think there's very many of them. My guess would be 2. Now, there are probably 2 or 3 800, 900-yard seasons in there as well. But he was oft injured. But when he was locked in and he was healthy, he was a problem. And there were seasons in there where he would make big plays. I want to see how many years he played. I'm going to go with 8, and I'm going to say he had 2,000-yard seasons. And then I'm going to say on top of that, he had another 2 seasons of 850, but didn't make it to 1,000. Okay. Let's see. Devontae Parker. Stats. All right. Let's see what he did in his career. So, yeah, 1,000-yard season. It was 1,200. And those years that I was talking about of 850 or more, none of those. Not a single one of those. He had over 700 twice. and he had almost 800 in 2020. But here's his problem. He only played 16 games one time in his career. And that one season that he played in 16 games, he had 72 catches and 1,202 yards and 9 touchdowns. That was his biggest problem, is he was never healthy. Never healthy. Solid receiver, but I don't think he ever lived up to the first round billing, right? So he's done. He's hanging up his cleats, and solid NFL career, but probably didn't live up to the first round billing, right? Did you see Netflix getting into the NFL fray? I knew that the NFL was going to try to milk, every single avenue that they could possibly explore. I don't blame them, first and foremost. I get it. You gotta squeeze every dollar out of every avenue that is possible. And that's what they've done. But with Netflix now getting a Christmas Day game in 2025 and 26, I believe. So not this upcoming year, but the following 2 seasons after this season. They'll have a Christmas game in 2025 and a Christmas game in 2026. You're going to need, at that point, in order to watch every single NFL game, you're going to need to have access to Peacock. So you're going to need ESPN first and foremost. If you don't have ESPN, you're asked out because you can't watch Monday Night Football. So you need ESPN. So some form of cable. You need Peacock when NBC decides, hey, we want to kind of force you to download our app like they did last year. So you need Peacock. You want to watch Thursday Night Football, you need Amazon Prime. Late in the season, you're going to need NFL Network. You don't have access to NFL Network, you're asked out because that's where those Saturday games are a lot of times. So you need NFL Network. Now you need Netflix. Did I miss any? And some of those international games are on NFL Network as well. Did I miss any one of them? Did I miss an app that you have to watch the games? Now, somebody's like, well, if you just have this app, you can watch all of the games. You don't need any of those other ones. I don't know about that. But it's crazy that you got to have all of those. Whatever happened to the good old days where all you had to do was have Fox, NBC or CBS and ESPN. What happened to those days? Yikes. And here's the thing with Netflix, similar to Peacock. I know a lot of people that ran into this issue because most people aren't purchasing these streaming apps. You know somebody that has it, you get the password, and it's like 3 people using the same Netflix. These apps are trying to get smarter now where you got to be using the same Wi-Fi, and if you're not, then you can't use the app, right, with this particular username and email and all of that stuff. But they're not as advanced yet. They're getting there. They're trying to get to a place where they can stop, app sharing and password sharing. But what happened during the Peacock game was that everybody that had your Peacock password was getting on the app before you got up there. And so when you tried to get up there, you were locked out on your own Peacock. So what happened, so I had my homeboy's Peacock because we got it because of Fresh Prince, which we just got word today that the new season of Bel-Air will be airing in August. Finally, right? We get season 3 of that. So you're watching Peacock. I'm watching Peacock. I'm watching the game, and then I get knocked off. And what happens is my boy, homeboy, he had given, like 7 different people had his Peacock password. And so everybody's trying to watch the game. And then when he got home and tried to turn the game on, he couldn't get in because it was too many people watching Peacock. And you can only have a certain amount. So his monkey self changed the password, which he is at liberty to do. It's his Peacock account. He's the one making the monthly payments, okay? Who am I to question what's going on here? And he locked everybody out so he could watch it. And I had to go, and we signed up for the free trial, and we watched the game, and then we canceled before they tried to charge us. And then I just called my boy out, like, yo, what happened? He was like, yo. And then he told me the story about he couldn't get in. I was like, oh, that's why it cut me out, in the middle of the second quarter. So we laughed about it. But that's a real thing, and that could happen when Netflix games come on. Like, Netflix is the king of you sharing your Netflix, account with like 8 other people. And if you just got the basic Netflix, 2 people can be watching at the same time. So when that game comes on, it's going to be a lot of people getting in the mix. And that's going to be funny to watch that situation play out. But we'll see how that goes. Speaking of Netflix, this one, I had briefly missed this. But were you guys aware of the receiver show? I don't think we talked about this on the podcast. Are you aware of so remember they did the quarterback show with Kirk Cousins, Patrick Mahomes, Marcus Mariota, and they followed those 3 quarterbacks. Am I missing anybody? No, those were the 3 guys that they followed. And went through their entire 2022 season. And it was a great watch. It culminated in Mahomes winning the Super Bowl. Cousins had a hell of a year that year, but he was dealing with an injury, and it kind of chronicled his journey through that injury and all of the work that he had to get done. Showed another side of him and his family, his wife, and all of that stuff. And then Marcus Mariota, the birth of his first child. And, he had a controversial exit from Atlanta where he left the team, and it, was highly publicized. And so all of that stuff was covered in the documentary. It was a great watch. And so we were kind of like looking forward to getting it again the following year, except everybody was like, hey, that was dope, but I don't want to participate. Right? Like, no quarterback wanted to sign up for that. I don't mind watching somebody else go through it. I just don't want to do it. And the excuse was, I don't want the distraction, which is fine. You're entitled to that. But, Peyton Manning and company, Omaha Productions was scrambling because they got this deal with Netflix, and Netflix is expecting you to deliver. Give me something. So they had to pivot, and they went to receivers. So this year it's going to be called Receiver. And the receivers that they have doing this documentary for 2023 are Devontae Adams, Justin Jefferson, Deebo Samuel. And this one was kind of weird because he's not a receiver, but he's such a personality that they just probably threw him in there because, like, who doesn't want to see George Kittle? He's a crazy madman on the field. He's a guy that has so much fun on the field, and I would imagine off the field, that they was like, he's got to be a great, follow. Let's throw him in the mix. So he's the 4th and final guy that they're going to follow, right? Technically, he's not a receiver, but and Amon-Ra St. Brown, I forgot about him. He's in this as well. Amon-Ra St. Brown. So it's 5 guys total that they'll be following. I don't know how I feel about that. Amon-Ra probably will be pretty good. Kittle and Samuel, they went to the Super Bowl. Jefferson had a really rough go of it. He was injured most of the season. And Adams, they stunk in Vegas. So what'll be interesting there is they fired Josh McDaniels during that season and they hired Antonio Pierce. That will be interesting to watch. So I guess there is a little bit of intrigue there, but we'll see how that one turns out. I don't know if it'll be as good as the quarterback show, but I'll be watching. That's for sure. So anyway, I digress. I want to talk boxing with y'all, but I guess I'll save that for the next episode. We have the first undisputed heavyweight champion of the world since 1999. I know all of you aren't boxing fans, so this might not interest you, but I'm going to talk about boxing on the next podcast, in addition to playoff basketball and whatever else is going on. And we'll have another division that we'll be breaking down from a draft perspective. So be on the lookout for that. In any event, that is going to do it for me, your man, Louie T, here on this installment, the 420th installment of the Louie T Network podcast. I thank you guys for joining me. I look forward to chopping it up with you guys the next time. But yeah, next episode, we're going to be all over the place. I'm just warning you in advance. We would have gone through, by the next time we speak, we'll be through the first two games of the Celtics series, and we would have already seen game one of the Western Conference Finals with the Mavs and the Timberwolves. So we'll have some stuff to break down there, and we'll talk about what we've seen in that series, what we think. But as we've seen to this point, these series could change at the drop of a hat, right? So keep that in mind. But anyway, I digress. You guys get out of here. I'll catch up with you guys next time. Appreciate y'all chopping it up with the kid this late, and I look forward to chopping it up with you again next time. Y'all take care. God bless. Good night.